What has been the focus of your organization, the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation at the AU Summit? Have you zoned in on any particular issues that you feel are relevant? I mean, what we're discussing on a radio show here is more public perception than anything else, and we might be totally off the button when it comes to what the real issues actually are.
Well, we focus, as you know, the IJR is working in many conflict zones and post-conflict areas throughout Africa. So obviously we're watching very closely issues like South Sudan, what will happen around the mediation there. We're watching Burundi very closely. We have a Great Lakes desk that's working with the Burundian TRC. So these are obviously the issues that we're watching, and what tends to happen at the summit is, immediate emergency situations kind of arise. So that will be a focus. We are also, we think, especially because the Kenyatta case charges have been withdrawn, there's really a great opportunity to reconsider the kind of international justice architecture. And we hope to see those kind of conversations outside of the politicized finger pointing that happens, because as we are quite clear on, the problem is not the ICC. The problem is a vast inequality within the global system.
And of course, I mean, we did something of a preview of the AU summit, and it came out quite clearly that most of the African leaders, for example, want to focus on issues of poverty, job creation, sustainable development. That came up a lot. I mean, the word sustainable.
There's a big focus on the Agenda 2063 and the 10-year implementation plan, which focuses on, harnessing Africa's resources for the good of Africa's people. The theme of the summit is on women and development. So the conversations about development are there. It has already been addressed. And I think that it will be a part of the summit. But my sense is, considering a lot of the kind of hotspots, that a lot of the security issues will kind of encroach on some of the space that had been sort of allocated for development.
And there are a lot of hotspots, aren't there? I'm just trying to remember: Burundi, Sudan, DRC, Somalia, Mali, Eritrea, to a certain extent, very recently. It's a lot of hotspots, isn't it? I mean, it's a lot to be able to deal with in just a couple of days.
Absolutely. And that is, I think one of the concerns is that we need to really be thinking, if we're going to speak a kind of anti-imperialist talk, and so we need African solutions to African problems, which we really do, we need the time and space and resources to be able to concentrate on them properly. So I think, for one case in point, that I think has left a lot of people kind of a little bit up in the air is the Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram threats. And it's very important, I think, that we look specifically at those issues and think, how do we do this differently? How do we address this issue differently, instead of kind of directly importing a U.S. Homeland Security type approach, which has clearly not worked? What can we do differently, and how can we think differently about this?
Do you think perhaps a starting point to all of this is that whilst it's very, very difficult to understand the whole canvas of terror, whatever one would like to call it, extremism, that if one goes into any particular society, and the societies where it's prevalent, one finds huge gaps between the rich and the poor, and between development and non-development. Do you think this could be the starting point?
Absolutely. I think that's an excellent starting point. I completely agree with you. I think that we can't imagine that terror exists in a vacuum, right? It's very often, this crazy irrational thing that happens. But it's not. It happens from somewhere. And I think because there's such a rush to condemn terrorist attacks, which we must do, we tend to stop thinking about why they might be happening. And absolutely, I mean, I think that we need to take off these kind of ahistorical glasses where we don't think of history and we don't think of systemic causes and ongoing injustice, and start to think of why this is happening. Because any solution, and I mean, I think the U.S. in Iraq and Afghanistan right now is kind of a case in point. It's not solving terror because it's not thinking historically, and it's not thinking about systemic issues and histories and colonialism and economic flows. And so I think any solution would need to absolutely, as you say, look at the gaps between the rich and the poor and look at systemic and historical injustices.